Time for my final thought. Now, prosecutors have requested an early release for notorious kingpin Rayful Edmond, citing his cooperation, which ranged from assisting in the conviction of extremely violent individuals to assisting in the conviction of ongoing narcotics trafficking to assisting in the institution of prison reforms. Now, many people who lived in D.C. during the 80s and early 90s feel some kind of way about that, as I did. Yet, as much as finger pointing is happening with regards to this case, this is much deeper than Rayful Edmond. Despite everything that he was convicted of, it's easier to point to Rayful and ignore the circumstances that created the crack epidemic here in Washington, D.C. Because every major city had their version of Rayful Edmond, from Freeway Ricky Ross in Los Angeles to Lorenzo Fat Cat Nichols in New York to Little Melvin Williams in Baltimore. There were kingpins doing the same thing across the country. That's not a coincidence. Crack was cheap and easily accessible, making it appealing to lower income communities. The failing public educational system and stagnant economy nationwide only made folks more susceptible before anybody knew how addictive and destructive it was. The war on drugs was predicated on victimizing those addicted without any solutions or alternatives to get out of the life that drove them to drugs in the first place, except to just say no. Studies show that New York, Newark, New Jersey, and Philadelphia were hit harder than D.C., despite our infamous murder capital of the world distinction during the height of the drug-related violence. So as strongly as people feel about Rayful Edmond and his possible release, he was simply a symbol of what was a much bigger problem. His release won't lead to a repeat of 1988. Unfortunately, there are other drugs ravaging communities nationwide already, like K2 and opiates. What we can learn from this is to work on the deeper problems that make people feel hopeless enough to turn to hard drugs or selling them, like improving the educational system, paying people a living wage, providing affordable housing options, and providing treatment options for addicts instead of simply throwing them in jail to get them off the streets. And if you're still not convinced, think about this. The year after Edmond was incarcerated, 1989, crime actually went up, and it didn't peak until 1991. We're going to continue this conversation online. You guys have a beautiful Monday. Get up, DC.